so much time in that house, they thought I lived there. I'm not joking. They came down and were like, oh, didn't you move in yet? And I'm like, no, I've just slept here 5 nights a week. So I was very interested, so of course I applied to live here next year, I got accepted, and now I'm part of 167. At the fall AGM, I was nominated by my friend Isla, who was part of the summer board, to be on the board, and I have the inability to say no to anything, so I said yes, and I got elected. And from there, I really tried to be part of the board. I was massively inspired. I had no idea this kind of movement and this kind of student-run initiative even occurred in Toronto or in any sort of educational setting. So it was really important to me that this be something. I'm sorry, I'm setting a timer because I will just talk forever. That it was important for me that I would get involved. So I kind of started pushing more for the board. Then I learned about this thing called the PD houses, or the participatory democracy houses, where basically the students got more control, they were more self-organized, and everything that I knew about participatory democracy houses are something that Lowther was already doing. So 167 Lowther, we've recently gone back to our old namesake Agnes House. So Agnes House, cook a meal together 4 nights a week, we often clean, we're very much a family. It's a very healthy culture, like even if it's little things, like I often study till 4 in the morning because I'm terrible at time management, and just like a housemate bringing me tea or reminding each other to get up in the mornings, or like we reminded, like, didn't you have a doctor's appointment in an hour? It's like, oh my god, I did. Like, we're very much a family, we're very much like siblings. Like everyone jokes I'm a house mom, we have a house dad, like there's a house uncle and that kind of stuff. And this is just something that we fell into. So turning us into a participatory democracy house was really important to me. I wanted to push that forward, I wanted to give us more independence, and more importantly, I wanted to maintain the culture that I found this year. So I started putting together a constitution, modeled after a constitution that had been put forward earlier in the year, so I started working on that. What I found from very engaged, wonderful, lovely, caring house members, it was like pulling teeth. Believe it or not, getting people to come sit down and go over like tens of pages of documents outlining rules and regulations and voting, people don't want to do that. Like, it's very hard to do. So I adopted several strategies while writing this. First of all, I was like, I will write everything, all you guys have to do is contribute. None of you in this room will be surprised that almost no one contributed. So what I did is I sat in the living room for like 8 hours, like for 3 days in a row. And I just waited for people to come by and like caught them in my spider's net. And I was like, come, you're going to sit down with me. And I always kind of spoke about what they were most engaged in. So the person who was always frustrated that the dishes weren't done, I'm like, let's talk about how chores are going to be implemented. The person who was always super concerned about, he can never make it to the house meetings. Like, how is your like weird working schedule going to make sure that you're still represented with our new voting rules? So this is sort of how I dealt with getting people involved, is I kind of pinpointed what sections would be more engaged to them. And then once they were involved a little bit, they wanted to get involved more. Because I'd be like, oh yeah, and I'm working with so-and-so and so-and-so. And they go, well, what's that? And then it just became more and more organic until I had people tracking me down and sending me messages over the next couple of weeks of being like, okay, so I was talking with Aaron and Toby said this, and what are you writing here? So it actually became a really engaged, really revitalizing experience until we had this 24-page monolith of a document outlining everything that everyone wanted to say. Now, our board is a little bit famous within our co-op. We like to argue a lot. I feel like that's pretty normal for every board. So when I presented it to the board and everyone had read it and they just liked it and they passed it right away, there was no extra going back or extra anything I had to fix. That was a huge point of pride for me. And not only for me, when I said this to my group, the whole house freaked out. We had a big party that night. We just all sat around and like congratulated ourselves about how great it was. And it was a really great moment that it started out with me being like, I want to preserve this culture because it has done and meant so much for me, to sort of getting the whole house involved and turning it into a whole project. And everyone is very proud of it. Like, people are writing the Constitution now, they're very much engaged, and they're talking about, okay, well, we actually want to tweak this, so how are we going to set up that house meeting? And I don't know, I'm very proud of this. I'm still involved in the board. I hope to continue being involved in the board during my time at co-op. And this all led to Tristan inviting me to talk here with a bunch of very prepared people and sort of give my anecdotal evidence here about even if people seem really engaged, when you hit that barrier of people not wanting to get involved, people not having the time, people seeming really disinterested, It might take a little pulling teeth. It might take a little sitting in a living room and sort of like passive aggressively pulling people into the room. But you can get people involved, and once people have their feet in the water, people want to swim. People want to be participatory once they are already involved. So just my little sort of anecdotal evidence that really engaged people can sometimes seem unengaged, and really unengaged people can sometimes be pulled in and be some of the most active members in the community. So yeah.